when I was in grad school, the lab that I was working in was essentially 3 faculty members who basically just all worked together. And then they all had graduate students. And we would have, like, weekly meetings with, like, these 3 faculty members and then me and, like, 2 to 5 other graduate students. And that was, like, the lab. And the lab that I was in grad school was not actively pursuing grants. So it was really just, like, we're all getting together, doing research with what we have.
I see. Which
is a huge contrast to the lab I'm in right now, where my boss is applying for grants pretty much 24/7.
Grant writing is one of those skills that I just straight up don't have. I probably should learn, considering how much being in the theater is like orbiting around nonprofit spaces and grant writing spaces and all of those things.
I actually am great at writing grants. Well, I'm learning. I've applied to like 4 grants this year.
I don't think I want any more skills. I think I'm good. After teaching myself audio editing this year, I don't think I want any more skills for a while. Like, sometimes I'm like, I should do a hobby like knitting, and then I'm like, I don't want to do a skill. I think I just would like to exist and not be bedraggled. I say that as if I'm not, like, actively going to yoga classes that are, like, do crazy stuff with your body, and I'm like, I want to be able to do it.
So right now you're wearing, like, a trucker hat, and the bill of it is kind of flipped up, and it looks a bit like you're wearing, like, an old-timey, like, little prince hat, like a Lord Farquaad-esque hat, like when you have it tilted up like that.
Oh.
Now you're embarrassed, so you're flipping it down.
Well, it's okay, so this is a Noah Kahn hat, and it's actually it's a flat billed hat, but it does kind of flip up, which I don't love. I don't love that this is a flat billed hat. It actually makes me feel a little crazy, but I liked the little logo. Speaking of not liking things on your body or doing crazy things with your body, welcome to Informed Attraction, a podcast hosted by a vial of Botox and whatever they use to do the fox thread eye lift about how you get a tweakment, you get a tweakment, you get a tweakment, we all get a tweakment. I'm Mackenna Goodrich.
I'm Dr. Aubrey Hoffer.
And this is part 2 of our series on plastic surgery and more specifically on tweakments. We're mostly focusing on tweakments here, though we are going to get into some larger trends in plastic surgery this episode. Now, I feel some important context for the audience is that Aubrey and I recorded episode 1 of this series in July. Not a joke. July. We had originally intended on posting it after the mascot series wrapped up, which we are still doing. But then that turned into a 7-episode series, and we wanted to be more seasonal with our 2 Halloween series. Speaking of, thank you for all the love on the Goth Girls series, specifically on episode 2. It means the world to both of us, but I'll be selfish and say it particularly warms my little soul because it became extremely about me. I bring up the many months between recordings just to say, despite my outline, I only sort of remember what we talked about the first time, but future Mackenna will find out when editing these episodes how much we've repeated ourselves this episode. Since we recorded the initial episode, I have had conversations about plastic surgery with so many people, especially as it relates to how it's impacting acting and also the rise of fascism in America. Like, one day after we recorded the first episode, Emma Stone arrived at the Eddington premiere with some new work done, and since then, I cannot stop seeing celebrities' tweakments. I know too much. I'm tweaking out about the tweakments. We've also seen folks like Demi Lovato get more obvious work done, and despite the tough financial times many of us find ourselves in, the influencers on the internet continue to get that work done. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about where we were, where we're at now, and potentially where we're going. Aubrey, have you had any conversations with people about plastic surgery since the month of July?
I'm sure I have. That's
okay, but they weren't relevant enough to remember? It keeps coming up. So it's come up with me for so many people. And like that makes sense because I had been thinking about it. Obviously, I've been thinking about it for a while, but it just keeps coming up in conversation. And so I was like, people are thinking about this.
I've sent you various Reddit threads, and I think what I am so interested in this conversation about tweakments and plastic surgery, and especially like the gender of it all, is oftentimes, and I'm sure I said something akin to this in episode 1, like, there will be a sort of before and after picture, like if somebody like Demi Lovato, right? And it's like all comments of men who are like, why would she do this? I don't find this attractive.
Yeah.
And it does remind me of, like, when we were talking about a lot of, like, the alpha male stuff and, like, men performing masculinity. And it's like, you know, we ask similar questions of, like, why are men doing this? Like, I don't find it attractive. And the answer, I think, at the end of the day is, like, I think it's all misogyny.
Well, yeah, but what's interesting too about it is it's like, I feel like in this instance, it's also like not really especially when it's getting to like the extremes, like these people who are like, you know, clearly overdoing it with the filler and stuff like that. Like it's unclear to me sometimes who they're performing for, because it's really no one like that sometimes. But I think it is this like societal pressure, which comes from a place of misogyny and from a place of capitalism, to always be like striving to be better, look better, feel better, etc. And so I think there's just this like, to me, almost even more so than the misogyny, there's the capitalism.
Well, yeah, I think there's also like a lot of norms among rich white women that you and I are not even fully aware of what those pressures must be like, because we're simply not in those spaces.
We're not in those spaces. No.
So I also imagine it's a lot of like rich white women being like, oh yeah, when are you gonna go get your Botox? When are you gonna go get your filler? And then...
Well, that's that conversation from White Lotus that we talked about last time. So, speaking of rich women and also capitalism, I'm gonna go over basically trends in plastic surgery since 1980. Why 1980, you ask? Because I feel reasonably confident that everyone who listens to this podcast is either a millennial or Gen Z. If that is not true, please send us an email at informedattraction@gmail.com and I will be genuinely gobsmacked. And also, the 1980s of it all, I think, is also relevant for some of what we're seeing in right-wing conservative trends in plastic surgery right now as well. But we'll get back to that at the end of today's episode.
But anyway, if you remember 9/11, shoot us an email, specifically with what you remember about 9/11.
Do you remember 9/11?
No, I was 5.
Right.
I remember...
I was 3. I think my aunt went into labor that day, so I think I remember my mom panicking because a baby was being born. But she also might have been panicking because of 9/11. And I don't know that I'll ever know because I was 3 years old.
I have a vague memory of 9/11, and I don't even know if this was on 9/11 or sometime after, but it was just, I'm like sitting on the bed and my mom is getting out of the shower and the news is on, and it's specifically they're saying that like, we're going to a orange alert or something, or like a red alert or whatever. And my mom was just like, we're gonna go to war. And that's what I remember. Yeah.
It's not funny, but like it is. Just because it's your mom is why it's funny.
Because she got out of the shower and was just butt-ass naked watching the TV.
We're gonna go to war.
Yeah. Fake titties, just wet.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of fake titties, this is actually a great segue. So I'm calling 1980 to like about 1995 the birth of the modern makeover. The 1980s introduced plastic surgery as a luxury commodity, a visible marker of wealth and power. The era of Reaganomics and supermodels, and it was apprising of a very done look. High cheekbones, tight skin, and big ol' boobies. Thinking about this brought back the trauma of reading the term hard body about 18 million times in American Psycho. Perhaps one of the most jarring things about that book was just how many times I had to read the freaking word hard body. During this period, plastic surgery shifted from reconstructive medicine into mainstream beauty culture. Worth noting here that we are talking about cosmetic surgery in this series and not reconstructive surgery, which also falls under the plastic surgery umbrella and includes things like craniofacial surgery, hand surgery, and the treatment of burns. We're also largely not talking about transgender affirming surgery. We are in some ways, though. I was talking about this with someone. I was at work the other day and I was talking about the fact that like this, it was last night. I was with some friends last night and I was talking about this is the episode we were going to record today, and one of my friends asked me like if we were going to talk about like transgender affirming surgeries, and I was like, no, like what we're really talking about is sort of like cis dominant culture trends in plastic surgery, and not things like facial feminization surgery specifically for like trans men. But what I will say is that I do think a lot of those surgeries still do tend to oscillate around a white Anglo-Saxon beauty standard. And that's often what some of those surgeries, especially for trans women, are getting at. But I think it's a lot less prevalent than what we're talking about within like surgery for cis folks. It's all gender affirming surgery, to be clear, but it is less of what we're talking about today. But I want to be very clear that like there is roots of these patterns across all forms of cosmetic plastic surgery. But like we're not talking about like people getting top surgery so that they feel more gender affirmed in their bodies because they are transitioning from being a femme presenting person to a mask person. Like that's not really what we're talking about here, but we are talking about mostly cis dominated culture. But I do want to acknowledge that like there is still a white beauty standard amongst the way that some gender affirming surgeries for trans folks gets done.
Yeah, in my theory of body image, which I'm working on writing up, this is something that I talk about in that paper, which is, you know, like ultimately I view appearance changing behaviors in and of themselves as pretty much like I'm agnostic to them. Like I really don't ascribe any kind of morality to any kind of appearance changing behavior, but rather looking at the intent and the drives behind that behavior are what is actually going to be telling when it comes to, you know, things like overall like mental health and well-being, where for some people, right, like dyeing your hair, getting tattoos, getting gender affirming surgery. Those are things that are, for many people, like acts of self-care that bring them closer to a physical presentation that aligns with who they want to be. Then there are some people who, you know, get breast implants or BBLs or the cat eye lift or whatever the fuck it's called, and when you search the motivations behind that, it's coming from a place of like, rather than enriching it because that is something that's bringing me closer to who I want to be, it's coming from a place of like, if I do not look like this, there is a fear about who I will become, what I will become, and the way other people will treat me because of that.
Yeah, and I think that like a thing that is true is that like that's a great distinction about like, is this something that is going to be affirming to the image of yourself that you hold inside, which is what we see with I think a lot of gender affirming surgeries, specifically for trans folks, or are you doing it to fit into some sort of dominant culture, which is I think mostly what we're talking about in this series, is surgeries that are geared towards fitting into the dominant culture, which for all of our history as Americans is a cisgender one. But I think the point that I want to just kind of briefly make is that there are pieces of transgender affirming surgeries that do still go towards fitting into the dominant culture, even if the person themselves is not, you know, even if it's mostly coming from a place of I want to feel more like the gender that I identify as. There is still, just in the way that the surgeries are done, tends to be an aesthetic that then aligns you closer to a dominant culture.
Well, it's like how there are it's like how influencers get plastic surgery and then they all start to look the same. I think facial feminization is somewhat similar, where a lot of trans women who get it end up looking quite similar.
You know, a measuring tape? I have a sewing kit, so I have a measuring tape.
Wow, what a sleigh. My goal is one day to buy like a nice bra.
Yeah, it was getting a bra that actually fit was really, and like the 34C wasn't so far off.
Remember booby bracelets? I heart boobies.
Yes. I was in 7th grade in the year 2012. What? No, that's not true. I was in the 7th grade in the year 2010. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
So silicone implants returned to the U.S. market in 2006 after a 14-year FDA moratorium. Liposuction, rhinoplasty, and eyelid surgery called blepharoplasty.
That's what my mom has. That's what my grandma has. That's what all the women in my family get. And they're like, you need to get it too, because I have hooded lids. And I'm like, oh... And I'm like, I don't think I need that. And they're like, no, when you get older, your eyelids will droop and you won't be able to see. And then that's why you're going to need to have it. And I was like, I don't know. I think maybe that's just the fucking...
I think that's maybe the medicalized justification for an aesthetic decision.
Yeah. It's like my cousin got fucking jaw surgery and everyone was like, she needed it. And I was like, no. She wanted
it, and that's fine. That's okay. But liposuction, rhinoplasty, and blepharoplasty were top procedures during this time period. Botox was FDA approved for cosmetic use in 2002, ushering in the frozen forehead look that became both desired and mocked. I know we talked a little bit about Botox last time. It's just so interesting. I think that because the time I've been conscious was basically the early 2000s onward. So Botox has sort of always been a part of like my life's cultural conversations. But like it really, grand scheme of things, hasn't been around that long as a cosmetic procedure.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm surprised that it's so recent because I feel like my entire life I've heard about people getting Botox.
Right. Well, and so we talked about this a little bit last time, but so Botox was being used for, I believe, eye treatment. Yes, so Botox gets approved in 1989 for treating eye muscle spasms, and then in the early 90s, Dr. Scott Frankel discovers that Botox can be used to treat facial wrinkles, and then it doesn't get approved for cosmetic use for another, 11 years. Oh, there's another doctor, Dr. Jean Carruthers, who also discovered its potential as a wrinkle smoothing agent. She was doing, I think, the procedure for people who were having the eye spasms, and then she noticed that it was also smoothing like the crow's feet situation when it was being injected for that eye treatment. It is important to note that procedures were still expensive and framed as dramatic life changes, not like regular maintenance. Patients were mostly women in their 30s to 50s. Cosmetic surgery was taboo, but tantalizing, something celebrities denied, but audiences still enjoyed speculating about. Plastic surgery equaled status, wealth, and effort. Then we get into when I was really developing and destroying my self-esteem, 2007 to 2015, the Instagram face era. The explosion of social media and HD cameras reshaped how people saw themselves. This is the beginning of the Instagram face, but I think we don't really full-on get into Instagram face until the back half of the 2010s.
Do you remember when people were so upset about selfies, when that was like such a huge part of culture, is people being like, the teens are taking too many selfies?
Yes, absolutely. So I think we also have to note, especially in this 2007 to 2015 era, this is the Kardashian influence era. And it was also the era where they were mostly denying the fact that they had had any plastic surgery, but also you could do the side-by-sides and you were like, okay, all right, something happened here. Botox and fillers at this point become mainstream, marketed as lunchtime procedures. And this is also towards the end of this period is when the BBL explodes. It exploded in popularity around 2014, shifting beauty ideals towards curvier silhouettes. During this era, non-surgical contouring, cool sculpting, thread lifts, and lasers grew more rapidly, the beginning of the Tweakman era. We also, during this period, see the rise of medical spas and injector culture. Dermal fillers like Juvederm and Restylane improved in safety and subtlety during this time. And social media marketing allowed injectors and surgeons to showcase before and afters directly to consumers. This is the era where I think the stigma started to largely fade. Getting work done was now self-care. Celebrities began to admit to minor tweaks, a little Botox, that's it, but not surgeries. Procedures became part of maintenance culture, the idea that aging gracefully required intervention. These trends all sort of continue into 2015, 2020, and this is when the Instagram face, I think, really solidifies. Like Aubrey mentioned, this is the selfie era, and the influence influencer marketing pushed aesthetic precision to new extremes. Snapchat and Instagram filters created digitally idealized faces people began requesting in real life, leading to the phrase Snapchat dysmorphia, which I certainly had in the back half of high school because it was like, that was when like everyone was putting a Snapchat filter on every photo. And one of the things that every Snapchat filter did was muck with your nose.
And thin your face.
And so I have long life have thought my nose is too big for my face because of Snapchat filters, and it is still a thing that's a little bit like, I'll be like, I have a big nose, and everyone's like, shut up, no you don't, but it's like, it is literally because for all of my formative years, I was using Snapchat that was going wink to my nose, and so I was like, big nose.
Yeah. I mean, even now, like the button nose, it freaks me out. I feel like people are getting their noses smaller and smaller to the point, like that's one of my uncanny valleys is when
got your nose, got your nose,
weird,
you got your nose,
too skinny.
I mentioned the BBL sort of popped off in 2014. By the time we get into 2015, 2020, we see them all over the place. And I think this era, the reason I siphoned off 2015 to 2020 out of that other chunk is because this is the peak blackfishing era for a lot of celebrities. The BBL is obviously tied to Black and Latina aesthetics. It's the Brazilian butt lift. But so they've taken this aesthetic that is what Black and Latina women's bodies just look like, and then they commodify it and export it to a wealthy white marketplace. In addition to the BBL, lip filler, jawline filler, rhinoplasty, and skin resurfacing dominate this time. And this is also when we start to see the beginnings of preventative Botox among people in their 20s. This is also when we start hearing terms like facial harmonization. I think this is when the term tweakments gets coined. Micro adjustments for balance, symmetry, and youth. This is also when clinics begin to offer starter filler packages and subscription models for things like Botox and filler. And also, cheaper global options lead to medical tourism spikes to places like Turkey, South Korea, and Brazil. The aesthetic injector becomes a social media influencer in their own right. An aesthetic injector is a medical professional, typically a registered nurse RN or nurse practitioner NP, who performs non-surgical cosmetic procedures using injectables like Botox and dermal fillers. In the same ways you have plastic surgeons popping off with side-by-sides in the early 2010s, the tweakment folks really start to get in on it in this like back half of the 2010s.
Those are the worst kind of people, by the way, because they think they're smart because they're technically nurses. And it's like, well, I don't know about that. My mom basically works at like a med spa right now. And one year she had me do, what was it? I think it was a couple rounds of like B12 injections or something.
Okay.
And so I would go into her med spa and like 3 times she injected me with the B12 shot, and she was like,
"Your mom did?"
No, the
Oh. I was like, the hairdresser Cheryl was injecting
the lady who works at the med spa my mom works at injected me like 3 times, but the whole time she's just like, oh, like, this is gonna help you lose weight. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm fine.
You're like, actually, it's okay, though.
I'm sure now if you go to my mom's med spa, they'll give you Ozempic.
Oh. Yeah, because if they're NPs or RNs, like, well, it depends if there's a doctor on site to write scripts for it. Yeah. I'm sure there is. They're doing things like Botox. So public discourse shifts from should you get it to where do you go? Diversity and inclusion conversations complicate aesthetic standards, but the overall look remains homogenized, even though it's largely appropriated from Black and Latina women. So now we're into today. So this is like our post-2020 era. And I would say we're in an effortless realism era. Plastic surgery is for everybody, and it's marketed as both a form of self-expression and self-surveillance. People are very aware of plastic surgery, and in many ways we become sort of culturally ambivalent towards it.
But then I think about like the Bezos wife and like that aesthetic where they're not trying to look effortless, right? Like it's what we were talking about in the episode before, where it's like that chasing after youth, and like it's the more fake you look, it's almost like that's more of a sign of status.
Yes, we'll be getting there when we get to fascism, because I think there's a There's an everyone aesthetic right now that like celebrities are going for. This is the thing we were talking about where like a lot of celebrities' faces are all starting to look the same because it's all this like effortless realism in a very specific way. And in the same way, a lot of the fascists are all starting to look the same because they're going for a different aesthetic entirely. Gen Z and younger millennials are leading in cosmetic procedure rates, which is very different. Like before I mentioned in the 90s, it was, in early 2000s, it was women between the ages of 30s and 50s. Now we're much younger than that. We see the continued surge in preventative Botox, lip filler, and jawline sculpting. We're really in the tweakment era and not the surgery era. I used to hear so much more about people my age getting things like breast implants and nose jobs. I don't know a lot of people doing those types of things anymore. And I don't even really in my own like personal circle know people who are doing things like Botox and thread lifts, because I hang out with a bunch of artists who don't have any money to do things like that. But I do know people my age in New York who are like sort of like the rich people who I've met in my time living in New York that like are doing things like this.
And I'm sure all like the Arizona Scottsdale lights are.
I don't talk to any of those people. And this is all happening alongside the rise of TikTok filler journeys, facial balancing, and AI beauty filters. Facial balancing is a cosmetic procedure that aims to enhance the symmetry and proportion of the facial features, creating a more harmonious and aesthetically pleasing appearance. We're definitely still feeling the effects of Snapchat dysmorphia, face filters, and selfie dysmorphia that we were feeling throughout the 2010s, but now there's also this wellness framing of plastic surgery as self-care and empowerment. The girl bossification of getting your lips filled.
Well, that's where I hear, like, idiots try to clap back on feminism by being like, the feminists don't want me to have my farm where I take care of my husband and my kids. Take that, feminist! And it's like, the whole point of feminism is giving women the right to choose what they want to do with their life. And if you want to choose to be regressed and dependent on a man, you can do that. But I would like to choose to do something intelligent with my life.
You're not making a judgment there at all, Aubrey.
I think if you're a trad wife, you're fucking dumb. But and it doesn't bother me because there's no trad wife who's going to be listening to this podcast.
Hey, if you're a trad wife and you're listening to this podcast, if you're a Gen X trad wife listening to this podcast, will you please send us an email? I would love to talk to you.
We get an email from a trad wife who's just like, hey, I came here because funny fat men really, really dragged me in, and I've been with you guys ever since. But when Aubrey said that thing about trad wives, I just feel like she doesn't understand what I'm going through in my life, and I don't think she respects my choices. And to that person, I say, you're right, I don't.
I have no beef with someone who wants to be a stay-at-home parent, regardless of, like, what gender you are. Like, if you're, like... I know people whose, like, life dream is to be a parent and raise their kids, and, like, I think that has done wonders for my older brother. Frankly, I think he was always just meant to kind of be a dad, and it's really given him, like, purpose in life. And I think that's awesome. I think there's a difference between, being, like, the thing that I really want is to be a stay-at-home parent and raise my children, because, like, that's work. That is labor. That is work and labor. Versus choosing to self-identify with the term trad wife. That is a different
princess thing. And being like, I want a man who will save me, and I just have to be there. And it's like, if you're not understanding that what you're doing is labor, you're an idiot.
I think this era really lives in that feminist tension we started talking about in the last episode. Are women more free to choose, or just under more pressure to optimize? And I think it definitely leans the latter in some spaces, but I'll say within my circles, I mentioned this a little bit, I haven't really seen this pop up. So I think there's also this reaction to the homogenization and the pressure to get tweakments that's like, yeah, no thanks, among young femme folks, particularly cis women. And like Aubrey mentioned earlier, I think that with more money and more access to these things, the pressure intensifies. Whereas if everyone you're hanging out with is too poor to be doing lunchtime Botox, no one really gives a shit.
Well, I mean, it reminds me of how when I first moved to Kentucky, I was very insecure because I no longer had money to get my nails done anymore. And I was very self-conscious about it. And then I realized no one around me has their nails done. And it was just such an interesting transition because in grad school, right, everyone who I talked to, they had their little full sets, and I loved getting my nails done, and I was very sad to not be able to do that anymore. And
Yeah.
then, and I think I would feel more pressure if everyone around me had their little full sets and I would feel like I didn't fit in or that I was like giving up this thing that I really like. And it would make it feel like more of a need than it is. Whereas, you know, everyone around me now, it's like, yeah, we don't have big acrylic nails and I don't feel as much of a pressure then to have them. And then when I do have them, you know, no one really notices or cares.
It's just a bit like, because I know you like getting your nails done. So like, do you still feel like this thing that we were talking about earlier? Do you feel like there's still this thing inside of you that like wants to have your nails done, or do you feel like now that that external pressure has gone away, you like don't like it anymore?
So I definitely still like it. For me, it's one of those things where my spending money is so scarce that it's like, would I rather spend that amount of money to get my nails done or to like go to a nice meal or do something else? And so that's where that kind of lies. Although I will say, like, my parents are visiting this coming week and I am scraping all my pennies together so that I can get my nails done before they get here, because my mom has had a full acrylic set since I was born, and that's something that I know she will judge me for, is if I don't have my nails done, she's gonna think that I'm like not in a good place.
See, it's so funny because we grew up with such similar moms in some ways and such different moms in other ways. Because when I tell my mom that I like, there is no world in which I can ever tell Peg the amount of money I'm about to spend on dyeing my hair, she would maybe have a heart attack and die. And like the fact that I get my nails done every 4 weeks, she's like, I don't understand why you spend your money on that. And I was like, because it just gives me some quiet time to listen to the last podcast on the left and have someone just do a service for me. And that is worth my $70 every 4 weeks, okay?
I will say, I actually don't like the experience of getting my nails done. Because for me, just sitting still for that long, like, I get just so fidgety and I don't like it.
I love it. And also the nail salon I go to, which I love. I love it. I love the nail salon I go to on the Upper West Side. And if you go into so there's like a front room and there's a back room. And if you're in the back room, there's really no cell service back there. So then no one can bother me. Yesterday I was listening to part 4 of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, and a man was doing my nails, and I was going, hee 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 hee, and I didn't have to look at my phone. I just had to go, Delightful. So I mentioned earlier that, like, we're not really talking about, like, what we normally call gender-affirming surgeries here, which is for trans folks, but that also all plastic surgery is, all cosmetic plastic surgery is, like, gender-affirming. You are, like, doing a thing that, like, affirms your gender and your appearance. And speaking of gender, for years, cosmetic surgery was seen as something that women did. Now, more men are doing it, but they're still in the era of pretending they don't. Cosmetic procedures among men rose over 300% between 1997 and now, per the American Society of Plastic Surgeons. Read a lot of data this week, let me just say. A lot of data for this one. The most common procedures among men include Botox, which apparently some people call Brotox, which I had never heard, and if I heard someone say it in real life, I think I would genuinely throw up. I think it would trigger my gag reflex. Ugh.
Nobody calls it that.
I saw it in so many articles. Someone is calling it that. We just don't know who they are.
No one colloquially is using Brotox in a conference.
You're getting your Brotox? You're getting your Brotox today, bro?
You getting your Brotox?
No, that's different. That's different. That's just two boys playing with each other in a bro way.
Well, yeah, that's what they get. They do their bro jobs after they get their bro talks.
Yeah, exactly. Under eye filler for tired dad syndrome, jawline sculpting, hair transplants, or PRP treatments for hair loss, and cool sculpting, fat freezing.
One of my coworkers, her boyfriend's brother was getting plastic surgery, and I was like, oh, is he getting his jawline done? And she was like, how'd you know that? And I was like, calls him like I sees him.
Yeah. So PRP, which I mentioned, platelet-rich plasma treatments are a type of regenerative medicine that uses a concentrated solution of platelets from a patient's own blood to promote healing and regeneration in various tissues and conditions. So they're used for a lot of things. Like a lot of people who have like knee issues will be doing PRP treatments. But for hair loss specifically, the PRP is injected into the scalp where it stimulates hair follicles and promotes hair growth.
Something like that at my mom's med spa. I remember the esthetician there was telling me how she sees more and more men come in, like, all the time for the hair loss treatments.
Totally. So we have celebrity normalization of procedures, but they aren't naming it. I think the example that probably has popped into a lot of people's minds is Zac Efron's face transformation speculation. He has a clear...
That feels different, though, because he was, like, in an accident.
Yes. Well, this is the whole thing, is that he was in an accident. He had all this surgery because of that. But then there are conspiracy theorists online, I don't know that I agree with this, but that who think that he has like used that as an excuse to get even more surgery done. But I again, this is nothing that I really care about speculating. I think he's because he was a child star. I'm like, can we just leave Zac Efron alone?
That's what I think with Carrie Underwood. I think Carrie Underwood had a very minor accident and then used that to give herself a new face.
Yeah, and I mean, Zac Efron like notably got a nose job when he was like young, when he was like a Disney Channel guy, and then so now people like point to like his jaw being much bulkier, which I do that one I feel like is more as a result of the accident, and then other like possible fillers. Some other folks that like people speculate about are Simon Cowell, Tom Cruise.
That's just that's not speculation.
Yes, I know, but he's never been like, I'm getting filler. But people around him are like, he's getting too much filler. So often with plastic surgery in general, at this time with filler specifically, you have like the celebrities themselves not being the ones to say it, but then everyone around them is like, yeah, he's going crazy with the filler.
I'm sure that I said this in the last episode, but to me the best example is looking at Steve Carell's hairline in the pilot of The Office versus now.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so Simon Cowell, Tom Cruise, Matt Rife, and Elon Musk are all men who people have speculated about, and it's less prevalent in the manosphere than it is amongst creators who are marketing to young women, but TikTok influencers and finance bros are subtly embracing optimization and tweakments.
I gotta tell you something about Elon Musk. My boss the other day, it was very clear to me she's never said the name Elon Musk out loud, because in a meeting, she just casually went, yeah, Elon Musk.
That's awesome. Wait, you know what? To be that outside of like having to think about that man as frequently as I have had to not know how to say his name is like, what a way to be living, you know?
And I was like the only one who reacted. Because I was turning, looking at people around me like, did you just hear this shit? Elon Musk? And yeah. Nobody indulged me.
Wow, that's just a world that I don't live in. Zoom culture made men more aware of facial asymmetries, under eye bags, and aging. TikTok filters and AI-generated avatars reinforce perfection expectations across gender. And like I mentioned, unlike women, many men, again, and I'm using women and men, I do really mean cis people here. Unlike women, many men don't admit to getting work done. They frame it as grooming, performance, or wellness. Phrases like looking less tired, the tired dad syndrome, is a common euphemism. Some will even refer to it as getting an executive edge, as in you look sharper at work. If women are trying to stay young, men are trying to look powerful. But either way, the work is still being done, just hidden behind different
There's like two different
framing.
ways that I think men go about this when they are mentally ill. So you've got so you've got like the incel like looks maxers who are all about like, you know, trying to make themselves look like, you know, alphas or whatever,
smashing themselves with hammers.
And then you have like my brother who thinks that sunscreen gives you skin cancer and purposefully puts himself in the sun for long periods of time because he thinks it'll like build resilience.
Your brother was so sunburned at your wedding.
Yeah, my brother was... my brother looked like a fucking 7-Eleven hot dog at my wedding because for some reason the day before he was like, I'm gonna go play golf or whatever.
It was pickleball.
Yeah. Did I tell you how he was a villain at the local pickleball venue or wherever they do pickleball?
Was this the thing about him, like, being mean to kids?
Yeah, there were, like, these, like, children who were playing, and he was playing against them, and there was, like, a crowd and stuff, and everyone was, like, cheering for the kids, and then Dalton just kept fucking slamming, like, them and just, like, destroyed them, and I guess he was playing up being the villain, because, like, the audience...
He was being a heel. He was literally being a heel.
The audience would boo, and Dalton would just be like, come on! And then they won! He beat the children and laughed!
It's like I almost have to respect it, you know?
I mean, in a way...
Because it's so fucking funny.
Yeah, and he's like, yeah, they were great. They're gonna be, like, champions one day. And I'm like, yeah, you're their fucking villain origin story.
Literally, those kids are gonna be in their challengers era because of Dalton.
And I'm not saying he should have let them win. I think it's fine to beat children at a game. But do you have to showboat and run around the little court?
Yeah, he was doing WWE being the heel.
Camp.
He was doing KFAB. We've also entered an era of undo, redo, repeat. Celebrities started dissolving their filler and getting their BBLs removed. There are rumors of Kylie Jenner and Bella Hadid doing this.
Then they just got him back, though. Like, Kylie looks the fucking same.
Can I be honest? I haven't looked at Kylie Jenner in such a long time.
I recently saw some celebrity gossip that did make me laugh, and it was, I guess Gwyneth Paltrow and Timothée Chalamet are doing a movie together, and I guess they met for the first time doing, like, costume fittings or something, and Gwyneth Paltrow's talking about how she was chatting him up, and she was like, oh, are you in a relationship? Do you have a girlfriend? And he was like, yeah. And then she's like, and he mentioned that she was a single mom, and I just thought that was, like, so progressive and so cool. Then I found out it was Kylie Jenner. And that really made me laugh. Gwyneth, if you weren't shilling out goop, I really would find you to be so much more of an endearing figure.
There's a musical happening... This is going to come out so far after this is already closed. There's a musical that's happening called Gwyneth Goes Skiing that, like, Kat Cohen and Darren Criss are in about Gwyneth Paltrow's whole, like, skiing lawsuit. Slay. Celebrities like Tallulah Willis, Olivia Culpo, and Lisa Rinna have all talked about dissolving their filler. Aubrey, do you know who any of those people are?
Isn't the one Bruce Willis's daughter? I think Tallulah Willis is Bruce Willis's daughter. Lisa Rinna, I know because my mom likes her, and that's it.
Yes, Tallulah Willis is Bruce Willis's daughter. I was like, I have no idea. She was the one who I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure who she was. Olivia Culpo is like a hot internet model and actress girly pop. Lisa Rinna was a Real Housewife. No. Yes. It was just very funny because I was like, this is a list of celebrities who I like, whose like names I've heard before. And I'll be honest, this dissolving of the filler. Like Lisa Rinna particularly talked about like having gone too far with the filler and being like, I went too far, gotta be done with that. I'll be honest, this dissolving of the filler trend happened alongside the aesthetic shift from co-opting the appearance of Black and Latina women into this very white, clean girl aesthetic. And it was just this bizarre time where so many women who had been co-opting the natural features of Black women for like years and years and years and years and years were just like, oh, that trend is over, time to be white again. And I am looking directly at so many people, but especially the Kardashians and low-key and Ariana Grande. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this trend and ye old Ozempic epidemic, I practiced saying this because I thought I was being so clever. The Ozepidemic, if you will, sort of coincided with the rise of white nationalism in the United States. Not by chance. It is a racist ideology that sees non-whiteness as a mark of inferiority, both physical, but also like intellectually and morally. Yeah. And it's bad. This podcast believes that white nationalism is bad.
And we're going to get locked up for it, I'm sure.
I mean, you've already had the CIA break into your house multiple times in order to put the brain.
It reminds me of how genuinely, like, when I look for body positive spaces online, it's a little dead right now. Because honestly, most of the big body positive influencers have shifted to other things. Like, the ones who were really capturing, like, the beginning of it, they basically just do, like, lifestyle brands or, like, general self-help type stuff. But yeah, there's, like, nobody I feel really doing, like, the fat liberation work. Yeah, I'm trying to do it a little bit, but I'd rather do podcasting, so I'm going to complain about it here instead of being the change I want to see.
We're in the post-woke era.
Yeah.
I also think it's important to mention that while celebrities were dissolving their filler, the regular folk were still getting them. A 2023 report from the American Society of Plastic Surgeons showed an 8% increase in hyaluronic acid filler treatments from the previous year. And plastic surgeons and aesthetic injectors talked about what they saw a lot of was people would dissolve previous filler and then get new filler to achieve a more natural look. And to be honest, I think that's also probably what all the celebrities are doing.
Yeah.
And they're just not talking about it. They're only talking about correcting the overfilling that they did before. Like I mentioned, we have seen this surge in the natural aesthetic surgeries and subtle tweaks. There's also been a rise in thread lifts, fat grafting, skin boosters, less dramatic than the nose jobs and boob jobs of the 80s and 90s, but still surgery. So in addition to the racism latent in this trend, beauty trends are faster and harder to keep up with, and I think in many ways people are viewing their bodies as sort of blank slates to impose all of these trends upon, but they have to be perfect blank slates. Even natural is now curated and coded. So where do we go from here? Number one, reaching back towards last episode, I continue to be worried about what this all means for acting, because if everyone looks the same and no one can move their face, I will continue to complain about this. I have specifically had so many conversations about this problem with people, and like, just we don't need every actor to look the same and not be able to move their face, and like it is actually annoying that everyone is trying to look the same right now, because the variety is, especially when you're trying to make movies about like regular people and everyone has the same clear tweakments done, it's like none of you look like regular people because you all can afford to get the same face that everybody else has.
Well, that's where there's a difference between actors and celebrities. And for too long, we have conflated the two.
But I think a lot of actors are doing this right
well, and that's where I think that it's fucked up, because they're trying to look like celebrities.
Yeah. And it also raises some bigger questions. What does it mean when your face and your body is an ongoing project? Is plastic surgery the latest form of self-expression or a form of self-surveillance? How do beauty standards shape not just how we look, but how we act, age, and connect? And I know, I made a wisecrack about the rise of fascism at the beginning of the episode and several times throughout the episode, but I genuinely think it is connected. Number one, I think we all know that there is this very specific filler-heavy aesthetic that has been adopted by a lot of people in the magosphere. It's this weird, and I don't say this lightly, it's this weird purge mask aesthetic. And like, I really try not to comment on people's appearances. I again, you know, we've been saying all this about plastic surgery. I do think you can do whatever you want. Like, what you do to your body and face is no skin off my back. Sort of reaching back to what we talked about in the Goth Girls series. Like, you can do whatever you want. You should just know what the thing that you want is based in. And I will argue that some of this current trend in plastic surgery is based in fascism and eugenics. And it's like, you can still get Botox. I'm not telling you can't still get Botox, but I'm just saying we should look at the larger societal structures that are imposing perhaps the need to do these things. Anyways, back to the purge mask. So I really try not to comment on people's appearances, but I will let an article I found while Googling speak for me. Aubrey, this is a quote that I would love for you to read. I'm messaging it to you now on Zoom.
People in power are super ugly right now. Through surgery and fillers and Botox and terrible makeup, they push their faces into a kind of uncanny valley between human being and ghoul. Objectively, they look like shit, and the populace is noticing. It's why J.D. Vance's grotesque face has become a meme. And yet more and more oligarchs and their supporters are adopting this bizarre look, enough that there's a super viral TikTok trend about Republican makeup, and foreign newspapers are writing stories about how everyone in America is beginning to look insane.
Now, I wouldn't say any of that, But people have been
I'll
saying
say it. They look like shit.
And, like, again, while people can do whatever they want with their face, who am I to decide what's ugly and what's not? There is this odd sense of feeling like being in the uglies by Scott Westerfeld. Aubrey, do you remember those books?
I never read them because I thought they would hit too close to home.
So the thing about what I think is important about the books that they do not capture well enough in the movie that came out like this year with Joey King in it.
Nobody hates Joey King more than her own agent.
Yes, it's true. Well, did her right in The Bullet Train, but then has not done her right very much.
She just is never in good projects, and it's crazy to me.
Yeah. But so in the book versions of the Uglies, it's like it's kind of important that like the way that the for those who don't know, the Uglies are a book series where I think when you turn 18, maybe 16, when you become an adult, you have to undergo these like really intense plastic surgeries to adhere to this dominant culture and become one of the pretties. I haven't read these books since like junior high, but like you have to do all this stuff, and if you don't, you become a social outcast. You're an ugly, as it were.
It's pretty subtle.
What is pretty subtle? What I think is really specific about the pretties is it's not like a look that we in our culture would define as like pretty. It's like it's specifically this sort of like fucked up aesthetic that is only achievable through plastic surgery. And that's why I sort of equate it to what's happening right now amongst like specifically the magosphere. Is like you can't look the way that they look without intervention. Like that's not how people's faces
Well, it's a demonstration
look.
of wealth, right?
Yes, exactly. So they are doing something to be like, I'm a member of this club of rich people who are choosing to look like this. Because it's such a strange and specific look that is so dominant among people of both genders in that party that it's like, what's happening here? Aubrey, this is from a Guardian. Aubrey, this is at the end of the episode, so I'm now gonna make you read a lot more because my mouth hole is tired. Aubrey, this is from a Guardian article about the language of fascist fashion that I would like for you to read. Are you proud of me for saying fascist fashion that clearly?
Yes.
Thank you.
While valorization of masculine power and fitness is an important part of this new aesthetics, women, who are traditionally associated with fashion and adornment, also have a role in shaping the look. Adhering to the traditional ideas of gender, the new Republican look of extreme plastic surgery and heavy makeup combines with Tradwives' 1950s dress silhouettes of cinched waist and flowery patterns to celebrate hyper-femininity.
And I also think it harkens back to the 1980s heightened plastic surgery aesthetic, which makes sense because Donald Trump is simultaneously living in the 1940s and the 1980s, and we're doing this like high gender performance. It's so funny because they're all obsessed with, blah, 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 gender, blah, blah, blah. And it's like they are doing high gender performance of like just trying to look like this thing I was talking about at the beginning of the episode of like the women looking like the caricatures of women and the men looking like the caricatures of men.
I feel like with hyper-femininity, we're never giving credit where it's due, and the people who are serving the best hyper-femininity is and has always been fat black women. Fat black women.
Say more.
Because, like, I am specifically thinking of, like, a very specific type of, like, fat black woman with, like, she's got her fit, she's got her hair done, she's got her nails done, the makeup is on point, like, that, like, but we never, like, actually use them as examples of hyper-femininity, and it's like, these are, like, if you want to know who's serving hyper-fem, it's fat black women.
Well, yes, because no one wants to give any black women credit. Like, that's like kind of the
And I guess that's where I'm
thing.
saying, like, hyper-femininity in and of itself is not, like, a negative thing. Like, I think it has, like, I think it frankly has been, like, co-opted from, like, especially, like, fat black women and, like, taken into this, like, perversion of what femininity is.
It's why, like, I personally, like, the Guardian quote uses the word hyperfemininity. I would even less so use, like, the word hyperfemininity in this context. I would more so use, like, I would say a caricature of gender. Mm-hmm. They are doing drawings of gender. They are doing when, like, little kids draw people, and they're like, I need to draw a girl, so I'm gonna do 2 big boobs.
Yeah.
And so biological advantage... It's a crazy sentence for me to jump back into after going 2 big boobs. Biological advantage and physical perfection are key hallmarks of fascist aesthetics. I mean, like, it's literally eugenics. It's all eugenics. Sorry for being dramatic, but it is. As Susan Sontag argues in Fascinating Fascism, I think this is the first time I brought up Susan Sontag on this podcast, which is actually kind of remarkable for me. Fascist art displays Aubrey, I'm done talking. Aubrey, right. You're playing Susan Sontag.
Fascist art displays a utopian aesthetics, that of physical perfection. Painters and sculptors under the Nazis often depicted the nude, but they were forbidden to show any bodily imperfections. Their nudes look like pictures in male health magazines, pinups, which are both sanctimoniously asexual and, in a technical sense, pornographic, for they have the perfection of a fantasy.
And I think that's like the thing of when I talk about like effortless naturalism that requires so much work. That's why I'd say it's the brain starts to galaxy brain out about the fascism and the eugenics of it all, because like that's we're looking towards this like genuine like Nazi idealism about like health and wellness being this pinnacle thing, and really like prizing specimens. I think that's what was so unsettling about the Sydney Sweeney's jeans ad. I think that's why that was so unsettling to so many people, because it was literally harkening back to this like straight up Nazi ideology. And like, it's just one of those things that like, we've talked about before on this podcast, and sometimes I can be like, this shouldn't be that deep, but like this is actually that deep. We are watching this like with the Ozempidemic and all of this plastic surgery to like look the exact same and to look very natural in their sameness. It is this thing of like, oh, we're creating a healthy glow and working on just even like the words like optimizing all gets into this just like it just leaves this horrific taste in my mouth, because I'm like, my brothers, this is eugenics, and like it just is.
When it's the tech bro like technical terminology, like trying to act like what we're getting toward is some, I don't know, what is the word I'm looking for? Like when everything starts to like diffuse into like one thing, like entropy, you know, like I feel like sure. These tech bros who view like AI as a religion think that like we're all gonna reach this point of like entropy and we're all gonna like merge with AI or something like that, and it's just like so insane.
Yes. The singularity thing.
Yeah, exactly.
This is why Neon Genesis Evangelion was always right. Shout out to my weebs. Aubrey's not trans, so she has no idea what we're talking about right now. No. I was reading this article specifically about Lindsay Lohan's new face and how many people wanted to be like, no, it's not surgery. She just started being healthy and had a baby and is a wife now. And at Uncanny Eli on Twitter said, sending it to Aubrey, obviously.
Oi, I do not like the fascist overtones of she didn't have cosmetic surgery, ethereal beauty just comes naturally from healthful living. Oh my god, I'm just gonna read it again. Oi, I do not like the fascist overtones of she didn't have cosmetic surgery, ethereal beauty just comes naturally from healthful living and childbearing.
Yeah, and so it's this weird thing of like, this is...
Well, it's like the same fucking shit I hear in spaces I'm in where people are like, if you heal your trauma, you'll become thin. Because your fatness is just your body's way of holding on to trauma. It's that idea that, like, if you just become morally right or righteous, that's going to be reflected in your physical appearance, which is fucking dumb.
Yeah, well, and that's why, like, you know, I mentioned this earlier, but, like, as we saw all of these women stopped co-opting, like, the aesthetics of Black and Latina women, like, the reason I connect that to white nationalism is because the whole thing with white nationalism is white supremacists view being a brown person as not just a like physical inferiority, but like a moral inferiority. And so it's this thing of like representing yourself as aligned with like white dominant culture. And it doesn't just apply to like for brown people, but like this is also like the attack on trans people that is happening, is it's like aligning yourself with white dominant culture and with like physical perfection, then in the eyes of these fascists make you seem like morally superior in addition to just like looking the same as everyone else. And it's just, I mean, it's fucking boring. It's fucking boring. But it's also like, so that's what I mean, that there's this weird distinction too between like the apolitical uber rich who are all doing this like, we're trying to all look the same and like effortlessly beautiful, that is like obviously tied into eugenics and all of these things. But then you have the political ultra rich who are doing the purposeful plastic surgery to make themselves like an extremely select group that are like, they're the unnatural beauties and they're like doing status. And so it's this weird thing of like, both of these things are both branches from the same white supremacist, white nationalist, fascist fucking tree, but they are branches that are serving in two different ways that are in concert with each other.
It also reminds me of the prop that conservatives have been using lately, where there was that case where that woman was stabbed and she was like a beautiful blonde, like I think Ukrainian immigrant, and everyone, like these conservatives online, like use her as like, look at this beautiful angel who was taken from us. And I've seen so many posts where people like post pictures of her and are like, she looked like Marilyn Monroe, like she was so beautiful, like emphasizing her beauty like more as like justification for like why her life was worth living and why it is bad that she was murdered. And it's like, if the person who was victimized in that clip was like, I don't know, unconventionally attractive, or like, you know, a black woman, they just wouldn't give a shit.
No, of course not. That was a really interesting thing. I was rewatching The Jinx semi-recently, which is, for those who don't know, The Jinx is the 2-season documentary series about Robert Durst. And I was so struck this time in watching The Jinx by when Kathleen McCormack, Robert Durst's first wife, went missing. So many of the articles were like the beautiful wife of billionaire Robert Durst. And so always, all of the articles about Kathleen McCormack's disappearance, like, emphasized how attractive she was. And like, you see the same thing with like people like Gabby Petito and like lots of these like women who have like gone viral in their horrific murders. There's this weird fascination with like preying on how pretty they were.
Or it's the missing white woman syndrome, right?
Yes. And so I'll say, like, this came from a place, the series came from a place of being like, isn't it kind of fucked up how acting's getting ruined by how much Botox people are doing? But like, I think that as I got deeper into this, and as just like, frankly, the world has changed from July to now, you know, it's like all of this just becomes a lot scarier, seeing the ways in which aesthetics are so representative of political climate. And that's where we're at. It's like all of these things politically are representative of the political climate, that all of these aesthetics that we're seeing are representative of the political climate that we're in. And again, this is not to say that I'm like, if you are getting the Fox thread eye lift, you're a fascist. That's not at all what I'm trying to say. I don't think that everyone who has gotten Botox in the past 5 years is a white nationalist. That's not the case at all. But I think that the larger scope of the trends that we're seeing are reflective of this descent into fascism and of white nationalism. And that, like, it brings me back to the question of, in a world where you can sculpt your face like a character creator, what does it mean to act natural? Maybe it's not about the surgery, but about the system that keeps telling us that we need it. And like, it brings me back to that kind of point we were talking about at the beginning of like, is this a thing that is coming internally from you that is going to make you feel more like the closest version of yourself? Or is it coming from you being on TikTok and being like, I need to look like Alex Earl? Because like, those are two different things. And I just think we should be spending some time examining those things. I frankly had like a little bit of, I have an appointment to dye my hair blonde on Wednesday. And I was like, and I had the thought of like, is this the time for me to dye? Like, what is that signifying for me to be dyeing my hair blonde right now? And the answer is, I don't know. But it is like a thing where I had to like be like, am I participating in white supremacy by being blonde? And I don't think so. I don't think so. But I had to think about it. I did have a little think about it.
I mean, it reminds me of, there is a fat influencer who I used to watch and really enjoy, and over the past few years, she went on a GLP-1 and then got bariatric surgery, and now I watch the things that she posts, because now her whole thing is like, I rejected the body positivity community for my health. And she posted something recently where she was like, you know, oh, you have to make sure you lose weight for you. So many people are trying to use rhetoric to say that me trying to lose weight makes me a fascist, and I don't agree with that. And it's like, one, I don't think anyone is really saying that. Like, like, I think that's the thing, is like,
yes,
no one's really saying that, but, you know, if the shoe fits. And
well, I think it's like, it's I think the thing that, like, maybe the best way for me to say this is, like, you have to look at things on an individual level and on a systems level. Mm-hmm. I don't think an individual person trying to lose weight, getting lip filler, whatever, is participating or enforcing fascism. On a systems level, the obsession with all of these things is an indicator and an enforcement system of fascist ideology. And as an individual, you do have to question whether you are participating in that or not.
Well, I'm thinking about, like, are you now creating a platform which is now, like, you know, subscribing to this system? Like, you know, you dyeing your hair blonde is different from you creating a social media platform where you're like, blondes are amazing, and I have blonde hair and I covered up all my tattoos and I look so much better now, and those idiots who aren't doing that are just trying to lie to you because they're uggos.
Right. Like, if I become an ex-goth girl evangelist, then maybe I'm participating in a dominant culture fascist system. It's so hard to be alive right now.
And again, like, I'm not saying this influencer who I'm talking about is, like, bad or evil. Like, I genuinely think she has good politics and is still, like, a morally good person. It was just disappointing because I just think that this was somebody who had some people say some mean stuff to her and then pivoted her entire platform.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, it's sad to sometimes see those trajectories. You know what's so funny? Do you know what I was thinking about while you were talking about this person? Mm-hmm. All of these people who have, like, gone back into the closet and are now, like, you can beat homosexuality influencers. Like, oh God, who's the guy that I'm thinking of? Oh, like, Lohanthony is one of those.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Lohanthony is like I used to be.
What the fuck? I had no idea.
I'll send you a great podcast like that. Yeah, he went to conversion therapy.
Does he think he's straight now?
Yeah.
Oh no.
He has opted for a life of Christian celibacy, and he has, like, abandoned lusts of both the homosexual and heterosexual. So I think he's just an incel. But a volcel.
Fellas, is it gay?
Fellas, is it?
Fellas, is it gay to be homosexual?
Well, Nick Fuentes believes that it's gay to like women, so, like, it's so hard to be alive right now, is the thing that's true. And
also, the world has always been falling apart. I know that right now it's falling apart in a different way. And also, if the fucking bomb is gonna come for us, I hope it comes for us while we're doing human activities, like talking to our friends on a podcast, and petting our dogs, and cooking dinners, and fucking making sweet love, not huddled up in the corner afraid that the bomb is gonna come.
Yeah, and it's like, that's part of why, like, I get sort of, like, hedonistic about it, and being like, fuck it. Do whatever you want. Get that Botox. Do that shit. And so there are two wolves that live inside of me. The wolf that's like, yes, do literally whatever you want. I do not care. Whatever makes you feel good, pursue it. The Pursuit of Happiness by Kid Cudi. But there is the other half of me that is an intellectual fucking dweeb who is like, well, we need to be thinking about the larger systems level implications of this. And this is what happens if you send your children to a liberal arts college. Okay. Turning Point USA.
Better than sending them to PragerU or whatever the fuck it is.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that should exist. I can't believe they want to show that to children.
They already are.
Everyone should reject PragerU and instead watch SciShow Kids, so I can make more seasons of SciShow Kids and hang out with those puppets.
And better yet, Informed Attraction.
We don't make content for children. Please don't have your kids listen to this. If you're a Gen Alpha listening to this, don't email me. Just go away.
No.
Skibbity bye.
I am a developmental psychologist, and I say, you know what, kids? Fuck it. Listen up.
Have a question or a topic that you would like for us to discuss? Send us an email at informedattraction@gmail.com.